things that we suffer, according to those with the unconstrained visions, it's because of the failure of other people to be as wise or as noble as themselves, because there are no inherent reasons for us to be unhappy.
So one looks at pain and difficulty in the world and says, well, this is the way life is. We'll never eliminate it. Let's be wise and prudent and direct institutions that make life as much better as possible. That's constrained.
Yes.
The unconstrained vision looks at pain and suffering and says we must remake the world. There are institutions causing this pain and suffering.
Oh, absolutely. Well, in France, the idea was that if you simply put the right people in charge and created the right institutions, then all these problems would go away. If you believe that what you need is to have the right leaders who love the people and so on, a messiah, as it were, then your problems are solved. But if you don't believe there is any political messiah, and you believe that you have to make sure that all people are restrained in what they are able to do, then you have the separation of powers, you have elections, you have constitutions, you have all kinds of things hemming you in.
Well then, if you see, well, one more question here. You write, the unconstrained vision, again I'm quoting you, has tended historically toward creating more equalized economic and social conditions in society, even if the means chosen imply great inequality in the right to decide such issues and choose such means, close quote. Inequality in the right to decide issues. Does that tell us why the left in the United States seems so much more comfortable with having courts make social policy?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what's going on.
Absolutely. That they want equality of outcomes, and they will choose how to make the outcomes equal. But they don't want equality of choice on the part of the people themselves. Many of the liberals say that they're for the family because they're for creating all kinds of goodies to give to families, but they want to take away the family's fundamental function, which is making decisions for members of the family itself, particularly the younger members who aren't yet grown.
Barack Obama, in August of last year, quote, "In the first 100 days of my administration, I will travel to a major Islamic forum and deliver an address to redefine our struggle. I will make clear that we will stand with those who are willing to stand up for their future and that we need their efforts to defeat the prophets of hate and violence." Close quote. What do you make of those two?
I think Barack Obama has a lot more faith in verbal interactions than I would.
That's the unconstrained vision.
Oh, absolutely. You see, well, what he's proposing under the guise of change is what has been tried for 2 decades between the two world wars, and which failed disastrously in helping to bring on the Second World War.
Well, that brings up another point. Is it fair to say that the constrained vision is more aware of history? That somehow or other there's an appreciation of and even a hunger for historical understanding, searching for precedent, what has worked before. Most things won't work. Therefore, we must work especially hard to discover what has worked in the past. And in the unconstrained vision, is there something, you don't say this in the book, this is a question that on which I'm taking a total flyer here, but is there something almost anti-intellectual about the unconstrained vision, an unwillingness to look at the large facts of history?
There's an unwillingness to look at the facts of history, and it's anti-intellectual in the sense of intellectual processes. Unfortunately, it's all too characteristic of intellectuals as an occupational category. Between the two world wars, it was the leading intellectuals of the Western world who talked the biggest nonsense. I mean, it was Bertrand Russell who said that Britain should disarm, while Hitler was building up this military machine across the Channel. And in France as well, and Russell was by no means the only one in England.
So why? Why would the unconstrained vision prove so particularly appealing to intellectuals?
That is a tough one. But I think that, I guess the short answer is they imagine that good people like themselves can make this thing go. And if it hasn't worked in the past, it's only because they haven't had the right people doing it. In other words, communism would have worked if it hadn't been for Stalin. But of course, once you have a system like communism, people like Stalin are the ones who will come to the fore.
All right. Back to warfare and defense. Barack Obama's plan for defense spending as of last year. I'm quoting him, quoting his speech. I'll stop spending $9 billion a month in Iraq. I will cut tens of billions in wasteful spending. I will cut investments in unproven missile defense systems. I will not weaponize space. I will slow our development of future combat systems, and I will institute an independent defense priorities board to avoid unnecessary spending, close quote.
Well, that's straight out of the 30s. There were people who were saying Britain should not. The British Labour Party in the early to mid 30s voted consistently against defense spending, and they argued that our security does not depend on armaments, but on disarmaments. And so when Chamberlain went to Munich to talk to Hitler, it wasn't just his own party, the conservatives, who applauded him when he came back. It was the Labour and liberals as well. He was probably the most lionized man among Western leaders, perhaps, of the past century.
All right. Two visions of the economy. Again, I'm going to begin by quoting from A Conflict of Visions. The constrained vision sees market economies as responsive to systemic forces, the interaction of innumerable individual choices and performances. The unconstrained vision argues that this is not how the economy operates, that it is currently obeying the power of particular interests and should therefore be made in future to obey the power of the public interest.
Yes.
Close quote. Explain that.
Well, they imagine that they can define the public interest by themselves. Whereas in a market, each individual defines his own interests himself and acts accordingly and interacting with other people and accommodating other people and competing with other people.
Listen to an exchange between Barack Obama and Joe Wurzelbacher, now known universally as Joe the Plumber. This took place on October 11th. Joe the Plumber, your new tax plan is going to tax me more, isn't it? Barack Obama, it's not that I want to punish your success. I just want to make sure that everybody who's behind you, that they've got a chance to success too. I think when you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody. Close quote. What do you make of that one?
Oh, I think it's classic left ideology. And by the way, he wants to spread Joe the Plumber's wealth around. He's not spreading his wealth around. We all know about his half-brother in Africa who is living in dire poverty. It's been fascinating to me, these various people who want to spend the taxpayers' money, but who, when it comes to charitable giving and so forth on their own, have no idea of doing that. I don't know if you're familiar with the study that's been done of liberals and conservatives donating money and giving time as volunteers and donating blood and so on. And contrary to what everybody expected, the conservatives do more of all of those things. The study showed that if everyone donated blood at the same rate at which conservatives donate blood, there'd be 45% more blood donated in the United States than there is.
And also, weren't you struck by the Joe Biden's tax forms when they were released? He's had an income that's roughly triple that of Sarah Palin, and yet his charitable contributions have been much smaller. Much smaller
absolutely,
than hers.
absolutely.
Right. Back to Barack Obama. Would you argue that this man is the most left-wing or the purest embrace of the unconstrained vision that we've seen in American politics since when? Since the New Deal?
Since there's been American politics.
Really?
Yes. Yes. I mean, even FDR, pulled back on some things. But Obama really, he does have the unconstrained vision, which is really an elitist vision. It says, I know what is the best to be done, and I will do it. When he says, I will change the world, you realize this is a man who has actually accomplished nothing other than advancing his career through rhetoric. And it reminds me of a sophomore in college, who thinks that he can run the world because he's never had to run anything. And you can believe that only until you have personal responsibility for consequences. And that's when it gives you a little bit of humility.
Why don't the American people see through that? Isn't that the fundamental bet that the founders made? That voters would see through, ultimately they'd see through nonsense?
Yes, but that was before nonsense became a large part of the curriculum of our educational institutions.